So topics for tonight. We're starting off AB to the Bucks. Um, uh, let's just say I'm bittersweet on this one. And part of that's a lot of you guys. A lot of you guys know I'm a Steelers fan, obviously, and not only a Steelers fan, but I was a massive proponent, backer of Antonio Brown. Huge supporter of Antonio Brown. I thought Antonio Brown was absolutely phenomenal, and in fact, put up one of the most historic runs in NFL history, which I had pointed out, and actually had a conversation with Adam Rank from NFL.com about it, to which he featured me in one of his articles, which was pretty damn cool. Um, and then Antonio Brown went on to the 2018 season and did what he did, and Antonio balled out again. And then he started to have his mental breakdowns, and then 19 happened with the Raiders, and it just bizarreness. Anyway, so I don't want to sound like I'm now an Antonio Brown hater. I'm very frustrated with him because I was such a Antonio fan for years and defended him tooth and nail to a lot of people who were trying to say that he was a diva out the gate. And the more I looked into it and the more I read about him, yeah, he had some issues. But here's what I want to say about Antonio Brown. He has calmed down on social media, at least. He has calmed down as far as media headlines go. Obviously, enough for Bruce Arians to feel comfortable bringing him in. Tom Brady comfortable enough to bring him in and give him a weapon. Do I trust his mentality? That remains to be seen, so not today. Do I think that he could potentially be a massive, valuable asset to the Buccaneers? 100%. Absolutely. I think that the team could struggle with him, partly because of his typical, what he falls back to, the you don't know me, you don't know what I've been through, and Bruce Arians doesn't. He admitted before Bruce Arians left the Steelers, or I should say retired, forced into retirement, that he and AB butted heads. There's tons of reports about it. He was not shy about it. So I don't know if he'll be able to handle him. Hopefully Tom Brady can keep the reins in. I don't know if the AB that happened over the last 12 months, 16 months, is still there, or if we are back to 2016 Antonio Brown, that balled, that was a good teammate, that stood behind his teammates, that didn't create off-field drama as much. And there was the hotel room throwing stuff out the balcony and stuff, but that was more partying. Now, he is going back to Tampa Bay. Or he's going, sorry, let me rephrase that. He's going back to Florida, and he's a Miami boy. So he's just across the panhandle there. So he's not far from his home area. Now, I don't know how that's going to play in terms of his upbringing, in terms of his old crews that he used to hang out with. I do know that he spent a lot of time playing sports growing up. He grew up without a dad and bounced from a lot of friends' couches to coaches' couches and whatnot. But I don't know his circle of friends that he runs with back there. So I don't know if that's going to play into it at all. It's not. I don't know if it's, obviously I reference stuff like this with Aaron Hernandez when he moved back to the Northeast because he grew up in that area and he fell back into some of the gang activity that he was around and whatnot. If you guys ever haven't watched the Aaron Hernandez documentary on Netflix, I highly recommend it. It was extremely eye-opening and well done, I think. But yeah, we moved to Miami, went to college, and then came back up to that area. Or I should say, sorry, he moved to Florida, went to college, moved back up into the area, and all hell broke loose in his life again, and being around the people that he was around when he was younger. So I don't know if that's going to play an effect with Antonio Brown. Anyway, point is, I hope he's successful. I would love to see Antonio Brown come back and finish the last 9 games. Let's see, they're 5-2, so 7. So yeah, 9 games. And I would love to see him come back and be successful. I definitely don't want to see him fail. I would love to see him continue the path that he was on before the falling out with the Steelers. Now, he's not eligible to come back this weekend. He's eligible to come back week 9 against the Saints. So they signed him. I guess the official signing was yesterday or possibly even this morning. So he won't be able to play this week anyways. His suspension is through the first 8 weeks, so he wouldn't be able to play this week anyways. But then he's got his COVID protocols that he has to follow, and so I don't know if he actually will be able to play this coming, or I should say in week 9 versus New Orleans Saints. He could, but I don't know if he will have the playbook handled by then. I'm sure this, right now he's probably, they probably gave him the playbook already. I don't know how that's going to play. I would expect him to really be a factor in games week 10 against the Panthers. He may get a couple looks against the Saints. I don't really think he's going to be a factor. So I wouldn't really expect him to play a whole lot against the Saints. I expect week 10. Topic number 2 that I was getting into. Now this is going to seem like I'm just talking about former Steelers. But Le'Veon Bell to the Chiefs. And I think this was a good move for the Chiefs. And I think as the next few games get going, this is going to be a very big thing for them. Now, they had Clyde Edwards-Helaire, rookie, and he was at a good first game. But then the next stretch up until this last, 2 games ago, when they signed Le'Veon Bell, he really didn't do a whole lot. And then they signed Bell, and then he went out and ran like a man possessed, 160 plus yards, whatever it was, and a touchdown. And then this past weekend against the Broncos was Le'Veon Bell's first action as a Chief. And they didn't plug him in a whole lot. He saw, I want to say it was about 25% of their plays. He did get to run the ball 6 times. He got no looks on passing downs, though. They just didn't really have him plugged into there. But he did actually have a better yard per carry average than Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which is not shocking because Le'Veon Bell's yard per carry was always a very good statistic for him, and that's a lot of it was his patient style of running, letting the blocks set up. I'm very familiar with how he ran. Obviously, he was a Steeler. And he's just a very talented running back. And I really think what they could benefit from is plugging him into a lot of these receiver packages where they could run a 2-back set and motion Le'Veon out to a split, out to a wing, out to, they don't have to run him necessarily between the tackles. They can run him out on routes because he's a very talented receiver, very talented route runner, and very polished. So I think what they could do is they could do a lot of trickery with him if Andy Reid decides to get creative with him, spread him out, maybe even put him in the backfield and spread Clyde Edwards-Helaire out. I mean, there's different ways you could do it. Helaire's not a slob in the backfield as far as receiving either, so there's a lot of different things you could do with it. It'll be interesting to see how they handle it, and I'm kind of looking forward to this. I'm not a Chiefs fan by any stretch of imagination. In fact, they're probably going to stand in the way of my Steelers making the Super Bowl, but damn, that offense could be deadly. Both Edwards-Helaire and Le'Veon Bell being able to motion either one of them out. You put 2 backs in the game at the same time, and you have no freaking clue who's going to touch the ball. So that's going to be a fun development as the next couple weeks go on. 6 carries for 39 yards this past weekend at 6.5 a clip. That's not shabby. That's not shabby. So I'm kind of expecting to see more of that where he only maybe touches the ball running, I should say, maybe 6 to 10 times, receiving, I could see him being a big factor, especially because his shiftiness, his speed, his elusiveness. I think he could end up seeing 5 to 10 targets a game on top of, 6 touches running the ball as well. He could be 100+ yarder between the two, not without batting an eyelash. I mean, how many times did that happen when he was a Steeler? I mean, every other game he caught 5 to 10 passes, and then he would have 20 rushes. So I mean, he was touching the ball 30 times a game, and you didn't even realize. All of a sudden, you're like, God damn, he had 150 yards rushing, and he had 80 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns. Holy crap! I mean, it adds up with him really quick when you have a playmaker like that, a guy that's so versatile. It just changes everything for your offense. Being able to get that moving, I think, is going to be really fun for Andy Reid. And once he gets that piece of it, we'll call it steamrolling. They're going to mow over some teams. That's going to be dangerous. OBJ, Odell Beckham Jr. Season over again. So kind of the same thing we saw when he got frustrated in New York, is we were seeing a lot of injuries coming out of him as well. And the last couple of games, he was missing some downs on offense, walking the sideline, taking his cleats off, shoulder pads off, and then he'd jog a little bit, back onto the field for 2-3 plays. So I don't want to say that he's on his way out of Cleveland, but I definitely could see them potentially trading him away. I want to say he's got 1 year left on his contract. And I don't know if anybody's going to pick up that contract, so I don't know if they're going to be able to trade him out. But I mean, it's a bummer for Cleveland for sure. That's a huge target loss for Baker Mayfield, and that's going to play into the rankings that I'm going to be talking about later. But case closed. OBJ done for the year. Dallas Cowboys, the train wreck that would be, and we'll just refer to the entire the entire NFC East as a train wreck at this point, because let's face it, the Cowboys are a mess. They are struggling, and it's really only going to get worse. They played a bad Washington football team that is literally relying on the backup quarterback from Cam Newton's days in Carolina. Kyle Allen, is not anything special, and it's Don came in right when I start talking bad about the Cowboys. I don't want to say anything bad. How do I word this? The problem that they're having right now, obviously, is there's no team camaraderie, and it was clearly evident. And I know a lot of people have talked about this. Andy Dalton got lit up by John Bostic, and not a single offensive lineman came to his defense. I've watched offensive linemen pummel guys because their quarterback got pushed the wrong way, not even leveled, pushed. Nick Foles got hit when he came in for Carson Wentz as an Eagle, and Kelsey came in and frickin' laid the wood to the guy that hit him. And you see Mason Rudolph last year when him and Myles Garrett got into it, and Pouncey went frickin' apeshit on Garrett. I mean, there's a level of defensiveness that the offensive linemen especially have to have for their quarterback, and there was none of that for Andy Dalton. The guys literally were standing there. I don't even, as some of you guys may have watched the hit, watched it further. I watched the hit, but I didn't watch too much of the ensuing minutes afterwards, other than the fact that nobody went after John Bostic. But it didn't even seem like the offensive line was too concerned. They just kind of stood there with their hands on their hips and looking down at him. It was kind of like the guy who's supposed to be leading you guys is laying out there unconscious, and it doesn't seem like you guys give a crap. And then they go into the locker room and talk to the media and throw it all on the coaches. So my thing with them is, where's the issue really? They weren't winning under Jason Garrett. They're not winning under Mike McCarthy. Now they want to point the fingers and say it's the coaching staff. Which is it? Was it Garrett? Was it McCarthy? Is it the combination of both? Or is it just the team doesn't have any desire to fight for each other? When you don't have that desire to fight, you're not going to win games. You've got to. These guys have to be out there taking everything, personal with when one of their guys gets hit. That's the way it's got to go. If you're not defending your own team, you're not putting up much of a fight in a game, period. And they got steamrolled by Washington. It was 25-3. That's brutal. I mean, they got literally washed. They did not put up a single touchdown and only one field goal. That's not a good thing against a division rival, against a sub 500 division rival that's on their second string quarterback with a new head coach who literally was going through cancer treatment. So everything was going in Dallas's favor going into that game, other than the fact that they don't have Dak, obviously. They've got tremendous talent at wide receiver. They have a very good offensive line. Yes, they have got a few missing pieces at offensive line as well, but they still have a solid offensive line. But there's just no sense of urgency to that team. There's no camaraderie. There's no going to the defense of each other. And now they got to rely on Ben DiNucci, who I'm familiar with, former JMU quarterback, played against the Bison this past FCS championship game. And DiNucci's no slouch, but he ain't leading the Dallas to a division win. I mean, let's be frank here. He's not going to. Ben DiNucci's a good quarterback, but he's not. He's not the second coming of Tom Brady coming out in the seventh round. I mean, he is literally a stopgap until Andy Dalton's healthy again, or unless they trade for Fitz or something else. A couple people said, "Hey, bring in Colin Kaepernick." That ain't happening with Jerry Jones. Come on, let's be real here. Jerry Jones was 100% against the entire stance of Colin Kaepernick. He ain't going to be signing Colin Kaepernick to come in and be a Cowboys quarterback. That's not going to happen. Let's be real. I do think Fitz is the best option right now if they're going to go after somebody. It gives Fitz a chance to be a starting quarterback, and Fitz is capable of winning the NFC East. Imagine Ryan Fitzpatrick comes in next week and Dallas ends up, so what, they're 2-5 right now. So they've got 9 games left. So imagine he comes in with 9 games left and goes 6-3. Ryan Fitzpatrick. Add to the legacy of Fitzmagic, if you will. I think it's something that Jerry Jones definitely needs to consider. Now, I don't know if Miami's going to make that trade right now, unless they're trying to pick up draft capital, which I don't know if Jerry Jones is going to give up draft picks if they're already where they're at, even though they have a chance to win the division where they're at. I don't know if they're going to give up draft picks for them, because I don't believe Jerry Jones thinks that they're a quarterback away from contending for a Super Bowl. Let's be honest, they're not going to be contending for a Super Bowl, even if they win the division. It's the NFC East, sure. But we're talking about beating the Packers. We're talking about beating the Bucks, Tom Brady, Drew Brees with the Saints, the Seahawks. Just to get to the NFC championship game would be a pain in the ass, let alone getting past one of those teams to make the Super Bowl. So I don't really see that going down that way. I just saw David mention Haskins. Dude, Washington's not going to trade him a quarterback midseason. In the offseason, maybe. But I don't see Washington making that play midseason, especially if literally they're both 2-5. If Washington traded Dwayne Haskins to Dallas and then Haskins comes in and beats Washington, that GM's gone. There's no way. There's no coming back from that. They never would trade Haskins midseason. Again, offseason, cut him. Offseason, trade him maybe. I don't see. When was the last time you saw a quarterback get traded within the division? A starting caliber quarterback. I don't really see that happening. It's possible. Tyrod, Brissett. Tyrod maybe, but Anthony Lynn loves Tyrod Taylor. I don't think you're gonna. I could see maybe Easton Stick. Once Tyrod, has anybody heard? Is Tyrod even cleared to play? If Tyrod's cleared to play and back up, I could see them getting rid of Easton Stick at that point, because Stick's talented. He's a very talented quarterback, and he could be a good stopgap for Dallas until Dak comes back. Absolutely. Brissett, That's feasible. I could see that possibly with Jacob Eason becoming the heir apparent to Philip Rivers. I mean, essentially that's the plan. What I understand, anyways, from the articles I've read, that's the plan, anyways. Well, that makes Jacoby Brissett expendable. Maybe you get a draft pick out of him, maybe fourth rounder, something like that. I could see that happen. That's actually a pretty good. I hadn't thought about Jacoby Brissett until just then. That's actually a solid one. Yes, I do believe Easton Stick would run with that job. I fully believe that would make Dak a free agent next year if they made the trade for Easton Stick. I'd be curious what the Chargers would want for him, though. I don't. I mean, they don't covet him that much, which was shocking. Personally, I think Stick should have been the starter this year. I don't believe they should have drafted Justin Herbert, even though, hey, I'm all on the Herbert bandwagon because that kid's fucking phenomenal. But I think the Easton Stick would have been fantastic for him as well. So it'll be interesting how they move forward, and if they do go with somebody else. I mean, as I said, DiNucci's not going to get the job done winning the division, let alone winning a playoff game. They're going to need somebody with some NFL experience. So plenty of options out there. I still believe, and I'll put my stamp on it, Fitzmagic, he's the guy. If they're going to do it.